Welcome to the Come Up Starter Kit, guys. My name is Shankar, and I have a very special guest with me today, Kaitlyn Heard, who is a talent acquisition manager for Millhouse Engineering based in Chicago, Illinois, but she is originally a Melburnian. Now, today, guys, I have brought on Kaitlyn to discuss if you are looking to move from Australia to the States in particular, this is all for you. So, Kaitlyn, thank you so much. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Now, I wanted to ask, how is Chicago at the moment? Are you guys still in lockdown, or what's to go there?
Yeah, so we're not in lockdown. There's a high amount of cases in the city, but I have been remote since March 2020. So I've had the opportunity just during COVID to be virtual, playing it safe, practicing safe, but no, we're not in a lockdown.
And I heard that you've got some crazy cases at 2,000 a day.
Yeah, and that's just in the city of Chicago. So it's not to be confused with the state or the rest of the country. Yeah, about 2,000 we're averaging a day.
Okay, crazy. All right. And now, Kaitlyn, to give the audience a bit of a background, if you could sum your career up to date in 60 seconds or less.
60 seconds or less, okay. Mine has been very organic, I must say, very organic. So I actually, straight out of high school, took a HR job. I actually went to a recruitment agency, not knowing what it was, because I was 18, right? Finished high school, saw some jobs online, and went to a recruitment agency for a job, an administrative job, just find my feet while I was having a gap year. And ultimately they said, hey, will you work for us? Will you be, a HR admin, a little junior recruiter over time? And I said, absolutely. And then ultimately, as anybody who's ever had a gap year can appreciate, earning money and full time is really, really hard to get back into the university game. So my career just took off from there. I spent, my first 2 years with this recruitment organization before going to a much larger one, Chandler McLeod, you probably know of it. Yeah. Spent years there and got a taste for blue collar and white collar recruitment before I then went into internal recruitment. Okay. And that was probably about 2013 or something, I would say. And that's when internal recruitment was really changing. It was talent acquisition and it was a talent partnership role. Right. And I spent the bulk of my career there, which ultimately was a global organization that led me here to Chicago. And after spending years with them, I actually transitioned to another employer while in Chicago. So came over with an Australian-based company, got my experience, absolutely loved it, but wanted to test the water with a US company, right? Not an Australian, owned and operated, living here and working here, but an American one. And since I've been with them for about 14 months.
Okay. And when you were sort of, I guess, now you're in an American-based organization, is the working culture quite different between Australian working culture and the American working culture?
It is, yeah, it really, really is. I mean, two things to it is that with the global company that brought me here from Australia to the US, you had Australian ties, you had Australian leadership team, you had an Australian company. So I had one foot in both doors. I was able to come home to Australia, and work and keep up to date with Australian HR and legalities and things like that, and then also be here on a work visa. But I do recommend entrenching yourself in a US-based organization because it took me out of my comfort zone even more so. I mean, as if living and moving abroad isn't a big deal, to then move to a purely US-based organization where my accent was, exciting and foreign. The leadership team was all US based. It is a very, very different culture, but one that I really recommend. If you want to actually get the full taste of living and working abroad, really immerse yourself in a US company to really learn, where it's based here locally, or how it operates, I should say, based locally.
Okay. So when you were with the Australian-based organisation, did you have to sort of apply, because they sort of, I guess, had a branch here in Australia, but then also a branch there in the US. Did you have to sort of interview for the role, or how did you sort of I guess, tether from being just in Australia and then move to the States?
Yeah, good question. I didn't have to interview with my previous company per se, but you really had to prove yourself. So I guess the origin of it all, when I was interviewing with Daniels Health as the organization, coming out of agency, interviewing with them locally in Dandenong, South Victoria, was where I was interviewing. Throughout the interview process, they had shared with me that folks were, had the opportunity to go to Chicago, help set up the US operations. And it was primarily conferences, training, things like that. And I was all for it. I loved to travel, was traveling since I was young, and thought, what an opportunity to live abroad is what I always wanted to do. So I got that opportunity locally in Dandenong, and then 10 weeks in, because of the hustle, the working hard, the voicing, I want to be overseas, I can do it. Give me the opportunity. 10 weeks later, I was sent for a short business trip of about 6 weeks to Chicago. Spent 6 weeks here, and then very quickly decided I wanted to continue to immerse myself in the US organization. It was growing significantly. There's different employment law, there's different, culture, there's different practices, and it really intrigued me. I was really ready for it. So no, I didn't have to interview at the time to transition, but I had to really showcase that I can do this, I can kill it. Then more recently, transitioning to a US-based organization, I interviewed with them.
Okay, maybe I'm going to touch on 2 points. So the hard work and dedication that you did in your current role, what sort of tips would you provide for someone that, there is a potential opportunity from overseas? What would you sort of say, how to get yourself noticed? And then we'll also touch on, I guess, the interviewing side when it was a purely American-based organization.
Yeah, my recommendation to get noticed for an opportunity that is international or global really is being agile. I think that's super important. And we say that all the time, and maybe it's a phrase that's thrown around, but you do really need to be agile. Like, showcase that when you don't know something, like US employment law, that you will find a way to figure it out, that you will Google, you will teach yourself. Your employer is absolutely there to teach you too, but you have to go after it yourself. Like Dan Daniels, the CEO and founder of Daniels Health, always used to say, you don't get a promotion, you've worked yourself into the promotion, and then you're recognized for it. And that was huge to me. And, ultimately, that was exactly what my career with him and the organization was. Working into the role and proving, look, this is what I've done, this is my idea, this is my initiative, and you were working yourself into the position. So I still very much believe in that today. So research, teach yourself, learn, do your homework on what is happening in the US, not just nation, but how big are they in the US? How do they fit into the US game, and what's it all about? And just, get yourself prepared, I would say.
Yeah, very good, very good. And so when you then had to interview for a purely US-based organization, what was the interview format? Was it very similar to as how we would do it here in Australia? Were there things that, you may have got caught on, whether it be the lingo or anything like that?
Yes. Yeah. So it's funny, when I was thinking about, lingo and what's different, I have funny stories for you. Lingo, it was crazy. But yeah, the interview style was very, very similar.
Okay.
Really similar. I couldn't really, distinguish too much of a difference. Other than what folks should prepare for, right, is that the company is taking a big risk on you when your home is literally on the other side of the world. It's not like taking a flight for a few hours to get home. So they're stepping up, they're sponsoring your visa, they're supporting you with the legality of it all, and they're trusting that you do want to be here for 2 years or, the term of your visa. So the only difference is there's a level of commitment from both parties that is a little bit more higher, or heightened, I should say, than that of when you're interviewing locally. They really want to make sure that that commitment is there, and vice versa. I really had to hone in on, I know you can't anticipate a downfall in a business, but I need to know my job is secure. So I really had to dig in to make sure that I wasn't going to be let go 6 or 12 months later due to what was then, look at COVID, a huge downturn in employment. And I was fortunate enough to keep my employment and continue to thrive, I must say. But if I had not have been, my visa would have been cancelled and I would have been packing my bags on my way back to Australia.
So on that topic with visas, is there a specific visa that people need to have before they get over to the States? And can you, or do generally your workplace, will they always sponsor you?
Yeah, there are. I can certainly speak to my visa. So there are a lot of traditional visas, and I guess as a fellow, talent professional, you've heard of the H-1B visas, and right, they're common visas. But with those particular visas, people need to appreciate that you're competing with several thousand, if not millions, of other people across all countries trying to get one of those 10,000 visas, right? Whereas with a E3 visa, an E3 visa is for Australian nationals only, and their spouses and their children and things like that. But it means you're only competing with your fellow Australians that want an E3 visa specifically for the US.
Yeah.
And they still have a similar seat. So they have, 10,000 visa opportunities that can be fulfilled. And to my knowledge today, those E3 visas are not being fulfilled to that 10,000 cap. So there's a lot available for the right people that have the right company to sponsor them and get them over here. Yeah.
So, and they also will sponsor, so say if I apply for the E3 visa or what have you, or the company sponsors me on that E3, that means that I can bring, my spouse or my family as well on that visa?
Yeah, so then there'd be their visas with it. So then they would also need an E3, like one visa, I think it is, or two. And so it suggests that I'm an E3 spousal visa. But yes, they would go through a similar visa process as you would, but essentially you'd have, the working rights and you'd be almost like the parent company of the visa. And then you'd have, your family applying for visas as well under that. Mm-hmm.
Is it a long, how long is a turnaround for the visa? Once you, get the contract, is it a heap time turnaround?
Yeah, such a good question, because it definitely varies. And I would say you and I are having such an interesting conversation at an interesting time, because what we did see in 2020 was we saw a significant delays on processing visas. Like I'm talking six-month delays.
Wow.
Whereas usually you should anticipate like a 3-month processing period, particularly with an E3 visa, and particularly if it's your first time applying for a visa, you should really anticipate a 3-month processing period. But as soon as you have all your documentation in hand, you've secured a visa interview at the US Embassy in Melbourne, you get there with it all, you have an interview, you swear you're going to be interrogated, you're nervous of anything, and they let you know on the essentially. They'll tell you then and there, don't sweat it because you're approved, or there's an inquiry or what have you. So once you have the documentation that you've prepared for the last 3 months, you have the interview, which can take a month. It's even taken me 60 days to get an interview. So these are all the things you need to prepare. But once you get there, the decision's pretty much immediate, which is exciting. So you can walk out of that embassy like I was,
Right. And so when you go through the traps of the recruitment process, and then is there anything Australians should be wary of when they get to the final stages, or is there questions that they need to ask around the contract, whether it be around salary, super, or anything like that?
Yes.
Okay.
And something that I've learned now through experience, because I certainly did some research, but yes, I mean, you said it, superannuation, that is the equivalent of what is called a 401k plan here.
Yeah.
And ultimately here, the onus is on the employee to contribute to their superannuation or 401k plan, and it takes the onus off the employer, because legally the employer does not have to match your contributions to your retirement fund. Most employers do, I must say, they do, certainly not as high as what we see in Australia with our 9.5% and things like that.
Right.
So really figure out, what are you sacrificing? How much financially are you sacrificing from your superannuation fund to be here, where, again, US employers, and particularly in Chicago, don't have to contribute anything to your 401k.
Right.
And the second thing to consider is these visas, like the E3 visa, it's only a 2-year temporary visa. So you either have to return home after 2 years,
Right.
or support your case to extend it for another 2 years, which is what I've ultimately done. But the reason why I share that is because, are you going to invest in a US retirement fund here that when you go back home to Australia, you're penalized for taking those funds out? You know, you'll be like you would with superannuation back home, you'll be fine.
Right.
So you really need to consider how that gap with your employer and say, from my calculations over the next 2 years, I'm losing X, so I need to be, you know, I guess it needs to be recouped somewhere. Or you go on a saving spree even further and make sure you're saving that cash you would have lost. So that's one of the things. And certainly if you want to hear about more, you know, healthcare is different too. So they're just differences.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. I think a lot of people would want to know that. How is the healthcare different, I guess, from Australia to the US?
Yeah. So the healthcare system here it's insurance based. So like auto car, or, you know, your car insurance, if you're in an accident, you're covered for it. If you're not covered, that out-of-pocket fee is significant. That's why we all get insurance, right? But the difference with Australia is kind of our universal public health system means every Australian has affordable and safe healthcare, regardless if you're on private healthcare or not, right? So that's, you're covered always. But here in America, if you don't have that car insurance, which is the health insurance, the out-of-pocket expenses are just far too much for any individual really to pay.
Right.
So the way that you can cover yourself is through your employer. So a lot of employers provide health insurance, so you can go to a simple doctor's visit, but it comes out of your compensation. So it's almost like a private healthcare based program here, where your compensation, those funds are coming out. So every paycheck, I have X amount of funds that go towards health insurance, so I can at least go to the doctors and pay, you know, $30 or $50 out of pocket, versus not being insured, where it could be significantly more. So that's another expense that I recommend Australians calculate. What is the cost of my health insurance in America? Because depending on the employer or the plan that you choose, you could still be having thousands come out of your compensation, your salary per year, to cover for those types of things that in Australia you otherwise wouldn't need to pay. So it's just a different system, neither good nor bad. I won't go into that, but it's an expense you need to consider. It really is.
And are these things that you must negotiate through the interview process? Will they say, will they tell you, hey, we'll give you, you know, we'll cover your healthcare, we'll contribute to your 401k, or are these things that you specifically have to ask during the interview process?
Yeah, great. So they, it's a company-wide, what they call benefits. So it's a company-wide benefits program. And within that benefits program is your health insurance rates, 401k. At a employer, you cannot negotiate different benefits to each employee. So once you join that employer, or before you join that employer, you should see what is their benefits package made up of,
Right.
and what is it going to cost you. Because no, it can't be modified based on, well, Kate's a senior, she killed it this year, we love her, we're going to pay more for her health insurance because she's a rock star. You can't do that.
Right.
But the packages will differ from employer to employer. So that's why employers should pay high contribution rates to your 401k plan, or should have really attractive health insurance, because I'm going to want to jump ship as a candidate if I'm not paying as much out of pocket because this employer is covering 95% of my healthcare cost. You're like, sure. So it is important for employers to be competitive and attractive. But to dive into it even deeper, it's a significant cost to the company and the employers as well. It really, truly is. And like anything, you know, it's the more people that participate in your company benefits, the lower the insurance and the rates are for the employer. So they want more people to opt into the benefits plan, because it will look better for them. But ultimately, if I was married here and my partner's healthcare benefits or benefits in general were better, I could be covered under at his company. So you can also have, you know, move it around. Very complex, but it's really interesting. So
also, I think another thing that I also want to raise with the audience, is it true that you can, that fire at will, that if the company wants to let go of you, that they can let go of you, and you don't really have sort of a, you know, 4 weeks notice period or what have you?
Yeah, so it's called at-will employment.
At-will employment, okay.
At-will, right. And for any Americans that I will share this with as well, you know, I have to be careful because I wouldn't necessarily, you know, say you should fire and dismiss instantly, you know, but it is at-will employment. So at-will employment basically gives the employer the right to immediately dismiss an employee. So the opposite of Australian employment law, where the employee is protected more and the most, and we grow up in the Australian employment law world signing contracts to say, you'll give me 4 weeks, I'll give you 4 weeks. Here, it's an offer letter that purely states your PTO, your compensation, your start date, keeping it really simple like that because it's at will and it's not contractual.
Interesting. Okay. And what's the annual leave like? Is it shorter than Australia?
It is. Oh my goodness. That's another good thing when you said, what should I recommend to people? So to make sure I was going to be factual as possible, I did, you know, Google this to back up my answers as well. And Australia, our minimum, or you start off with, is 4 weeks. Here, the national average of the minimum is 10 days. That's where you start with, 10 days. And so it's kind of unheard of here in the US to have much more than 4 weeks, unless you're very tenured with the organization, and I'm talking 5, 7+ years, will you start to see 5, 6 weeks. So another big thing Australians out there are sacrificing is your personal time off. Make sure it's worth it.
Okay, interesting.
Make sure.
All right, so I guess jumping back to the whole job searching side, for people that are wanting to, I guess, look for jobs in America, is there any particular job boards that they need to be wary of? And is there some ones that you can recommend that are probably the best?
Yeah. LinkedIn, universal. Do it, keep with it, guys. I mean, the important thing as well is state on your LinkedIn that you're open to relocate, and put the US cities that you're open to relocate to, because trust me, it works. I look for folks that have open to relocate, and I've been a part of an organization that has said, Kate, I don't care where you get the talent from, as long as you get the talent. So I don't care if I'm sponsoring a Canadian to come, you know, just the hour flight to Chicago, but wherever you find them, we'll sponsor them. So LinkedIn, update it. That's the biggest thing. That's how I found, you know, Daniel's help. They approached me on LinkedIn, and now I'm living my dream, which was genuinely to live abroad. It was. So LinkedIn, universal, can't pass it up. The second thing, I guess, the Seek of the world, or the Seek of Australia here, is Indeed.
Okay, right.
Indeed's the #1 job board. And that's where a lot of traffic comes from. So if you're interested, check out Indeed, but LinkedIn is certainly where it's at.
Okay, and if candidates are applying with, I guess, on Indeed with a CV, is there anything that needs to mention on that CV at all that makes them, I guess, or is there any sort of bare essentials that need to be stated on that CV?
Yeah, with us considering that you would be an Australian hoping to obtain work in the US?
Yeah.
State that. State you're open to relocate. You know, state where you want to be based. Put the US knowledge base that you have on your resume.
Okay.
You know, out there for sure. Do your homework. Yeah, I would definitely say that. I think Australians are fortunate that a lot of the companies that we have in Australia are US headquartered.
Right.
So get that exposure and put it on your resume. If you're working in Cranbourne for a US-based company, learn and get in front of that US, you know, national that's there, and learn. And even if it's only, you know, financial reporting, but in US dollars, and converting it, and things like that. Put all the smaller things on there, because it still matters to US employers that you've had exposure, and it's not all just, you know, localized, because like we talked about, employment law is so different, so different. So there is a big learning curve. So yeah, if you can get in front of that US VP that is headquartered, you know, in Chicago or something, and you're in Melbourne, connect with them, learn from them, ask for special projects, take it on and get it on your CV. Yeah.
Okay. And you sort of touched on the fact that even where you're working with, it doesn't matter where the individual is, and they're open to sponsor people from international. Is that quite common for other, I guess, US-based organisations? And should people feel like, because I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people just are scared, right? They're scared to sort of apply to the US because they think, hey, no one's going to really pick me, because why would they? I'm overseas.
Yeah. I think a common fear and a fair one for sure. I think it is mainly, in my experience, global organizations that welcome it and want it, because they are exposed to this works. I'm getting talent that is diverse in their skill set, their influencing ability, their communication, because you know, it's global, and you're picking somebody up from Australia or the UK, and you're, you know, immersing them here. So yeah, it's more common with global organizations, I would say. And then local ones, like, I don't know that my organization today is ready for it. Entrepreneurial, that show them the way, teach them the value, and I think US-based organizations will come along for that journey for sure. It would be, especially with COVID, what, you know, we learned is that talent can be anywhere, because we were all working virtually.
So true. I think a lot of organizations will catch up with times soon enough, and you know, we can have talent everywhere and work for the organization. If you can't reach it, go virtual.
Yeah, so they live by that model now. They're like, hey, I don't care if they're in Alabama and don't want to come to Chicago. Like, you know, it's been a good opportunity for us. So it'll be interesting to see how it shapes employment in the future for sure.
Yeah, okay. And I guess talking about salary, when candidates are going over there, is there a reference point that they should be looking at, or how do they sort of figure out what is the right salary? Yeah, just think if there's any guides that they can use.
Yeah, I definitely recommend pay scale.
Okay.
Get on pay scale, because the state to state the cost of living and the salaries, and even the state-based tax that you'll pay, not just federal but state, differs significantly. So pay scale is the way to go. Get on there, put your job duties and details in there, and the city that you aim to live in, and definitely do it that way when it comes to compensation. And then there's sites that, yeah, absolutely, you go on for cost of living, so you can see, eating out, is that more expensive in Chicago compared to that of Colorado or Denver, I should say, and doing that analysis. I did before I even moved here as a part of all the negotiation. I even looked at housing that I would want to live in neighborhoods I want to live in, so I could make sure that I was setting myself up properly.
I get, is there sort of websites around the living side as well that people, I'm not sure if there's like a blanket like REA for us here, but is there one over there?
Yeah, there is. You've just caught me on what it would be called.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
There is. I, funny enough, was doing it, recently again, was looking. So I definitely know there is.
Yeah. What about from a personal perspective in regards to you? What's the learning and the growth been like moving from Australia abroad? How has that been, not only, I guess, professionally, but personally as well?
Yeah. It's funny, we talked about it before. My career path was organic, and I did, get accepted into Victoria University, but I ultimately never completed it because my career was taking off so much that I know it's important, but it was not stopping me. Yeah. But got to a point here where it stopped me. Right. And so I took a PHR course, or a professional HR course, to get HR certified in US federal employment law at a federal level. And then it was my job to learn it state-based. But I did ultimately, I really found that I got to a point where my learnings were so organic, and I was an excellent communicator. I had strong stakeholder relationships. I could teach myself, almost anything, and I really was. And I had wonderful guidance from my company and the leadership team and all of that. But when I wanted to take the next step in US HR, it can't be organic. It just can't be. So I ended up, going to night school for a number of months there to get my, professional HR certificate. And it was really not to be able to job hop. Yeah. It was for my own confidence that I knew what I was talking about here. So yes, that was my learning, that organic growth is cool and it works for a period of time. Right. But with me, I had to get that formal education here. And I'm so glad that I did. It was challenging, but I'm glad I did, because I can speak to US HR matters as it relates to talent, not so much employee relations as often, but certainly as it comes to equal opportunity, compliance and employment and everything like that, I feel much more confident, and it has helped me excel into a leadership role, because I can walk the talk, as they say, support yourself now, so.
What about from a personal growth?
Yeah, the personal growth, I did think about this a little bit, and it was exactly that. It was the confidence here, that personal growth. Emily Fisher, one of my leaders at Daniel's Health, I keep referring to it, and now a really good friend, she had always said when times were tough, it's character building, Kate. It's character building. And now that I'm here, I so understand what she means by that. It is such a character building moment for me living abroad, and my ability to connect with a diverse range of people, whether they're, because I also worked for the UK entity, right, supporting. So I can speak, to folks and certain, I guess, employment law there, and in Canada and Australia and the US. So it gives you a sense of, confidence that helps me build into being a leader, and a humble leader, because I didn't do it traditionally. I didn't get the university degree and then come abroad. I did it really different. So the personal skills of the confidence, and to live over here by yourself and not know a single being when I first came here, besides, you know, the CEO and founder who brought me on over here. I didn't know anybody, and now I've been a bridesmaid, you know, twice to friends that I've met here.
Right.
Yeah, bridesmaid,
Okay.
soon to be auntie for some of my friends. So personally, the growth has just been phenomenal. Really, really cool feeling for sure.
And would you do it all again?
Absolutely.
Right.
You know what? I would have done it sooner.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Sooner.
I think maybe for the younger people, is it still, is there opportunities for, I guess, I'm not sure about fresh grads, but grads that may have a little experience under their belt, is that an opportunity for them to sort of still look at the US?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it as well. I certainly would. I think it's an interesting time because of you know, COVID-19 and the pain that organizations went through. So I think we need to cool off a little. We need to find ourselves again after COVID-19, and then I think the opportunities will open up so much more globally for grads or intermediate people or managers or whatever it may be to branch into the US. But I think we need a little bit of healing time, and it will all ramp back up for sure.
Very good. All right, guys, thank you so much. Now, Kate, if people want to connect with you, how do they find you?
Yes, please connect with me, LinkedIn. So Kaitlyn Heard, spell it out for you, connect there as well. Happy to give out, you know, my email address and contact details, but please, reach out via LinkedIn. Kaitlyn Heard, I'm at Millhouse Engineering and Construction Incorporated. So that will help you find me as well. And I'm also connected with you.
Yeah,
so
I'll pop your details in there as well so people can get a hold of you. And we're also going to do another episode as well around grads and how they can stand out as well, because Kaitlyn is very well experienced in that, so we can help a lot of grads out as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited. This was fun.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your time.
Of course. And if I can get you over here to the US, you know, let me know. I can work this for you as well.
I might have to pull some strings. Yeah, I might have to ask you to pull some strings. I'm just gonna